Hello, my name is Mark Taylor, and you're very welcome to the show, which is part of the Education on Fire podcast network. I just wanted to take this moment to thank our sponsor, the National Association for Primary Education, who speak for young children and all who live and work for them. This can include parents, teachers, governors, and all those interested in primary education. NAPE, which is a non-political charity, works tirelessly to support teachers in the classroom and leads the primary umbrella group of 30 primary subject associations and unions, and gives teachers and schools a voice at governmental level at consultation meetings with ministers for schools. If you'd like your voice to be heard and to find out more information, please visit their website at nape.org.uk. That's nape.org.uk. Hello and welcome to the Education on Fire podcast. The place where we share creative and inspiring learning in our schools. Primary Music Special, episode 103. Hello, welcome back to the Education on Fire podcast with me, Mark Taylor. Today I'm joined again by Ollie Tunmer, and Ollie, you'll remember, was back in episode 43 talking about Beat Goes On, and we caught up again very recently at the Music and Drama Education Expo, and he was telling me about some of the great new projects he's been involved in, so he's going to come back on, give us a bit of an update of how everything's going there at Beat Goes On, and some really great stuff, which I think crosses over very nicely in terms of our English season, as well as the music membership site. So Harley, thanks so much for joining me again today.
Hello again, lovely to see you.
So why don't we start with the Music and Drama Expo? It was a great experience for me because it's always nice to meet everybody and catch up and everything, but you're also involved as well as having a stall. You're actually doing you're also there doing some of the workshops and things as well.
We had a great time. It was actually the first time we've had a stall there. And so we were able to kind of, rather than me walking around and kind of bumping into people and catching up that way, people kind of came to us. And so we delivered the opening music session, I think for the first time that year. They had a kind of a separate music and drama. But yeah, we delivered a body percussion, and it's kind of body percussion, but we also had an Afro-Brazilian song that one of our facilitators, Lily, taught. And then we had some kind of accompanying body percussion that went with that. And then from our stall, we actually did a series of taster kind of workshops. We had a kind of early years kind of focused workshop, and some of this body percussion with literacy that we'll talk about in a bit. And hoping that we're going to be kind of up in Manchester at the Expo later on this year doing the same thing. But it was a nice way that all the people who kind of participated in the workshop then came and chatted to us about it at our stand. So it was a nice way to kind of actually kind of get those conversations going.
Yeah, and it's a little bit like when you sort of go into schools and do workshops, isn't it? It's the fact that these people have experienced exactly what it's like firsthand. It just opens the door and everyone feels very comfortable. It's not just talking theoretically about what could happen. They've actually experienced it, and that's the best way, really.
Absolutely. I think we found that was very much the case because it was a 2-day thing, and all the people who'd kind of the conversations we had on the first day were very much about the workshop and how they could kind of implement what they'd learned into their own teaching. Whereas on our second day, it was a little bit more cold calling and kind of explaining what we did, which explaining body percussion without doing it is quite an interesting challenge in itself. But it was a useful thing to be at.
And what sort of people did you have? Were they mainly primary or secondary teachers specifically for music, or were they sort of non-specialists, or did you sort of get a gauge of the sorts of people that were there?
Huge variety. I think the nice thing, I guess, about the expo is because it's free to attend, you get all sorts, literally. And so we had, a variety of primary and secondary classroom teachers and instrumental teachers. We had hub representatives. We had people from abroad who are coming, and I think who have been before, because I think it was either the 5th or the 6th year. And it's great to kind of hear kind of how they've kind of got on with the couple of days, and also how we might be able to work with them in their countries. It often creates some really nice kind of creative projects throughout the UK and internationally.
So why don't we just dive into that a little bit in terms of those people listening who maybe haven't listened to the first podcast or not as au fait with the Beat Goes On as some others. Just tell us a little bit about the background and the sorts of things that you sort of provide, both in terms of online but also in terms of the actual workshops people can buy in for you.
Sure. Well, I mean, our kind of standard line, as it were, is that we provide stomp style body percussion and samba drumming workshops and CPD. The stomp style element comes from I was a cast member of Stomp in the London and European tour casts a few years back now, but. I've combined that with my education experience. I was a classroom music teacher for a couple of years, and so we kind of combined that to produce workshops and CPD, as I said. But the nice thing about percussion, and particularly body percussion, is that it's applicable and anybody can do it. You don't have to be a music specialist. And so when we do workshops, we're aware that we're working with often when we're working with adults, we have a variety of different experience levels and confidence levels, and so we need to kind of adjust how we teach and what content we cover appropriately. And as we've grown as a company, so has our team. So we are now team Beat Goes On, and we have an early years specialist, we have an SEND specialist, we have people kind of located around the country, and indeed kind of the occasional facilitator kind of internationally as well. These are all people who are kind of brilliant in their own right, and I basically just kind of chat to them about a little bit about the Beat Goes On way of doing things, and then ask them to put a Beat Goes On t-shirt on, and then off they go. So it's not so much a question of training people from scratch. On the workshop side of things, yeah, we kind of work with literally all ages, and do kind of a combination of one-off school workshops through to kind of 10-week and longer-term workshops, kind of culminating in often in performances. And that also we kind of explore creative options. So it's rather than just us teaching pupils Afro-Brazilian or other rhythms, we kind of explore some compositional devices as well. So yeah, as I mentioned, the international side of things. Last year I had quite a bizarre 3 weeks. I had a week in South Korea at a British international school there for an arts week, and then I came back to launch Sambaroke, which is it's kind of not really part of Beat Goes On, but it's a mass karaoke sing along with a live samba band. So you get your favourite 80s power ballads and then put a samba band along to it. So came back for the launch of that, and then literally the day after headed out for a musical futures conference in Melbourne. They call it the Big Gig, and I did the kind of opening session for that and some samba drumming workshops. So and that was all within 3 weeks. So it was a slightly surreal time, and I didn't know kind of where or when I was. But it's nice that, obviously we're kind of getting that international work. Yeah. So as I said, we've been developing as a team. The work's been kind of spreading left, right, and centre. Also, recently we've been kind of collaborating quite a lot. We like working with like-minded individuals, and have kind of just finishing off a samba project with Charanga that lots of your listeners may well have heard of and indeed use. And obviously Talk for Writing, who I think we'll probably discuss a little bit in detail, and also I just had a chat today with guys from Sing Up, who we're going to be developing some ideas with. So there's lots of ongoing kind of collaborative ideas, as well as developing the Beat Goes On stuff as well.
That's great. And can you give us any insights into the sort of the Charanga stuff, which I know you've been sort of doing for a little while now, in terms of, is that sort of standalone, as in people that are already using their platform can just literally take on board the Samba stuff and do it themselves, or how does it work?
Basically, it'll be a way of it'll be an online resource, as all Charanga stuff is, and our thing, it's essentially a 10-week long workshop. I think this case might be 7 or 8 week long workshop course that is done online. And I guess the nice thing about Charanga is that it can be kind of delivered, for want of a better word, by non-music specialists. They can press a button and off you go. So we recorded a whole series of videos in Brighton, and have kind of combined them with rhythm grids, and also we got some authentic videos recorded in Rio de Janeiro, so some kind of trying to give it that authentic sense, and kind of getting musicians from the Rio Carnival kind of giving instrument demonstrations. And so during the course of the project, we kind of mostly focus on samba batucada, which is the kind of Rio style carnival samba, but also kind of there's elements of afoxé and maracatu and other Brazilian styles. And so by the end of it, we also kind of explore, as I said before, kind of compositional roots. So it's very much, there's kind of creative elements in there, as well as learning the kind of authentic rhythms on the authentic instruments.
It sounds great. I mean, it's that gives you that whole breadth, doesn't it? And I love
Absolutely.
the fact that of just being able to sort of, see people doing it authentically and actually just sort of getting the flavour of it, which is often the hard thing I've found from having done samba workshops myself. You know, you sort of, it still feels very English or British sometimes when you're going into it, because often you're going into school, so you might be wearing something smart or something, even if it's relatively samba casual, or like say with a t-shirt, it's still a teacher delivering something in that sort of more formal setup. So I think in order to sort of get that really full sort of samba sense, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, we're trying to kind of get away from the kind of the gringo factor, essentially. So getting these kind of authentic or instrument demonstrations is kind of quite a key part of it, and something that I kind of haven't seen as much of kind of elsewhere. So we're looking forward to seeing. The end product is kind of, I think it's due for release possibly at the end of this year, but I think, as with all of our things, if you follow us on social media with Beat Goes On UK, we can kind of keep you up to date on all our goings on.
Yeah, it's great, exciting. I'll be really interested to explore that once it goes live, which would be fantastic. So the collaboration thing, as you said, is very important, and so we chatted a little bit while we were in London in terms of working in terms of English and sort of that mix between music and English, and how you sort of combine projects with that. And I think the important thing always to remember is the fact that, you know, they're all part of the one. They're all creative. It's just using what we have available to us in terms of giving children the freedom to kind of explore stuff and create things which are inspiring for them. And it's just giving them that structure, isn't it? So tell us a little bit about how that's been working.
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned before, we've been working with Pi Corbett, who many of your listeners may well know, and his organisation Talk for Writing. We originally met at a conference a few years back, and I hadn't heard of him. I think in primary circles he's a bit of a living legend, but he seemed to like what at that point I was doing, and he kind of got me into his conferences, one or two of his conferences, and we actually delivered some workshops together. So he created some stories and some poetry with some children, and then I took some of the kind of lines of those and then kind of suggested a few different options of ways that you could say those lines out loud as a rhythm, and then how we kind of use that rhythm then to create a body percussion rhythm from that. And then we've since then kind of developed that into our own standalone workshop that we kind of do, because obviously Pi and his team are very, very busy elsewhere, to create our body percussion with literacy workshop, which either uses children's own written work or lines from books they're reading. And then, as I said, we explore kind of some of the options, how those lines can be spoken out loud. And they're kind of exploring kind of the pulse and the syllabic options. So, for example, the word percussion, it's percussion. That middle syllable is emphasized rather than percussion or percussion. And we're kind of exploring that and really kind of getting in depth with the rhythm of words and how those kind of syllabic elements work. And then once kids are kind of happy with how they want to say a given sentence out loud, they then adapt that onto their bodies. So it's kind of creative literacy and music simultaneously, and it's really lovely whenever we do these workshops. It's very much we're almost kind of using the children as a vehicle for teachers' CPD. We obviously want the children themselves to have a fantastic experience, but it needs also kind of really predominantly it's something that the teachers feel they can take away and implement straight away. We did a session a few weeks back, and it was over the course of a week. And one of the teachers had gone back and he tried to do this with a scientific principle. And basically, the whole class had kind of created a body percussion rhythm that was the rhythm of this scientific principle. And every single one of them could kind of tell him, if they asked them, I think he asked them a couple of days later, what that scientific principle was, and they were able to remember it because they did it through the body percussion. So it was a kind of an aid memoir as well as being something fun.
I love it, and I think it is that because it's so interactive, and the fact that it's memorable, isn't it? That's often the thing.
Yes, absolutely.
There you've got sort of the mental imagery, you've got the physical memory of actually creating it, and the combining the two together, and that's, it's a proven method, isn't it, in terms of actually making sort of memory work in that way and bringing it to life.
Yeah, and then upcoming we've got a project that we're going to be delivering across Brighton schools, which again in collaboration with Pi and some of his team, and this is with the Brighton and Hove Music and Arts, and who are part of, I think, Brighton Dome and Festival. They're the kind of various labels that they kind of go under, varies from time to time.
Yes.
But yeah, the guys who are responsible for that element of the music making in Brighton, and so that's going to be a nice kind of project that we're starting off this term. There's going to be a kind of a CPD day, and then there's going to be a kind of 2 half days per school over the course of the next couple of terms, where we implement kind of and support teachers in implementing this kind of combined music and literacy approach. And I think lots of these schools are already talk for writing schools, but they're quite excited about how the kind of the percussive elements can be added to this, because obviously, as I said, like before, the body percussion side of things, it's something that can be done anywhere by anyone at any time. So it's the accessibility of it is quite a key factor, and we're kind of looking forward to seeing how that project develops.
And I can really imagine that with, I mean, literacy and obviously maths and the sciences, that they're so high on everyone's agenda now. But I think, you know, we talk about getting music in the arts as a bigger part of the school. But I think what this shows us is the fact that no matter what the sort of the overall focus needs to be, and what teachers and schools need to focus on, there are ways to bring it all together under sort of one roof, as it were. And that being creative like that just means that everyone gets what they want, which is more creativity and a breadth in the curriculum, but it's still been able to use it in a way that ticks all the boxes that schools still need to tick. And I think that's really clever.
Within this project, I think there's a lot of very excited heads who are kind of looking forward to kind of, as you said, kind of ticking those boxes, but in a fun and creative way, which doesn't always happen, unfortunately. And I think sometimes it's a bit of a risk to take, because it's a kind of a creative process. It's a bit messy. It's not always predictable. There's kind of outcomes we're aiming for, which may vary during the course of the process. So it's not, although the box sticky bits there, the kind of the risk and the messiness of a creative process is also involved. So we may well end up with kind of outcomes that we hadn't kind of foreseen, which will be fun to see.
And also doing it over such a number of schools as well. It'll be really interesting to see how the results work. It's one of the things I've always been interested in. You sort of do the same thing in this, but in a different place, and each day is very different, and that's interesting in terms of our creativity, isn't it? As sort of instructors and facilitators, because then you really do have to be adaptable and actually just work with who you've got with you and create that atmosphere in order to get, like I say, whatever the outcome you're aiming for. But like I say, it can be messy and it can go in all sorts of directions.
Yeah, and also very, very pupil led. Which is lovely. It's literally each session can go in a kind of a variety of different things, and it's a question of then how you kind of cope with it. Okay, right, you come up with that. Okay, no, let's try and use that. But then also sometimes the challenge for the kind of, I guess, experienced music facilitator is then following wherever that goes, but still keeping it in a way that perhaps the kind of the less experienced teacher can kind of take something away from, rather than it just being some kind of Frank Zappa-esque wig out. So yeah, we have to kind of take all those things into account.
And so what other projects are you involved in? What new things are you doing apart from this particular literacy one?
Yeah, so there's a few nice things coming. As I said, we had a chat with Sing Up today, and so they're kind of quite interested in kind of developing that within their kind of CPD events and conference input. Also, very excitingly I guess for me personally, but also for kind of Beat Goes On, is that we've just kind of signed an agreement with Hal Leonard to do a body percussion resource, and this will be basically a kind of a culmination of all the workshop material. Well, most of the workshops that we've been using, certainly a good proportion of it, and it will be a combination of online videos and rhythm grids, and we'll kind of show how we go about some of the ways that we go about doing kind of body percussion workshops, and also some of the creative approaches we use, and very much something that teachers of all ages, and perhaps not necessarily kind of classroom music teachers, but independent musicians or kind of leaders of community groups can apply, and I'm aware there are some existing body percussion resources, but this be very much kind of Beat Goes On's kind of take on it. And we've kind of, I've pretty much kind of written it out. It's just kind of a question of doing the filming. So watch this space for the release date.
No, that sounds fantastic. And I think actually what seems to come across as we've been chatting is that sort of overarching kind of idea that in this day and age, you need so many versions of things to give the support you need to each person. Like I say, if there's a music specialist there, then they can take things very directly from a visual resource or printed music or however that happens to be, and then a non-specialist needs a little bit more. And so some of the projects you're doing within schools, so like you say, they're getting the CPD as part of what's actually going on, is just really giving them the skills they need for the future, which is great. And then, like I say, then just that collaboration with lots of organisations means that you get the opportunity to reach more people and support more people in different ways, like I say, whether that's within schools or community as well. So it seems like you're on a real roll in terms of that sort of, as I said, overarching kind of idea of just getting this sort of rhythm aspect out into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, as I said before, with the whole body percussion thing, particularly, I think because it is so accessible, and I guess also when especially kind of when we go internationally, there can be all sorts of rhythms we haven't heard before that can kind of come into play, and it becomes very much a kind of a collaborative thing with us and whoever we happen to be working with. So it's a lovely platform to kind of connect with people, and it's kind of often referred to as this kind of universal language of rhythm, but that takes many different dialects. So it's a fun job to do. What can I say?
And how are you finding, I mean, there's lots of talk in the press and anecdotally about, the lack of money available to schools and that kind of thing. So how are you finding it in terms of people's availability to instruments? Obviously, that's where the body percussion thing is so brilliant. But in terms of sort of having access to things as they want to expand out from that initial contact that they have with you, are you sort of finding that what people are saying is true in terms of there's less and less and less, but are you finding that people actually with the right mindset and the right creativity are giving what they really want to give?
I think there's probably lots of different answers. That there's no two ways about it. Education funding is being cut, unfortunately, and I'm sure there's whole kind of things on that. From our kind of own specific point of view, because we do lots of one-offs, if we're there can often be kind of pots of money found for a kind of a one-off in the summer term, for example. The body percussion with literacy it has been funded by literacy budgets rather than music budgets, which there tend to be vastly more of. But then if you've got kind of creative thinking heads, then they realise that there's a combination there, and the music can benefit from it. The junk percussion's also obviously a nice one because the resources are very much recycled, and there's also a kind of a bit of a science link there, with kind of the way that different materials sound and that side of things. So, but I mean, there's no two ways about it. I mean, we have had lots of people saying we simply haven't got that money anymore, which is a real shame, and we're always as kind of flexible as we can be in terms of kind of adjusting and kind of working with schools to try and make things happen. We've also got lots and lots of free resources from our website that people can download, and we're going to be adding more as we go along. And so it's stuff that people can kind of try and use and implement. And we have a new videos page, which from the website, which is going to be updated regularly, which has kind of ideas for people to try out themselves. So we're always trying to kind of basically offer as much as we can for free, and then kind of be as flexible as we can elsewhere. But yeah, it's a full-time job for me. We've got a team of facilitators who kind of who are kind of pretty busy. So we do make it work, but I think there has to be some quite creative approaches to financial side of things, even more so than ever, I think.
Yeah, and just give us all the details in terms of the social and the website and all that, so people can go and find out exactly all those videos and things that they can see more of.
So everything's available via beatgoeson.co.uk and via our social media, which is beatgoesonuk.
Fantastic. And I will see you again at the Music and Drama Expo, whether that's back in London or whether we go up to Manchester and that as well. It's always great to wander around and have a chat to people, and our very brief conversation will be part of my music and drama podcast that I did, where I went round and chatted to quite a few of the facilitators. And so that's going to be coming out soon as well. So it'd be exciting to hear all of those different things that were going on that day.
Absolutely. There was a lot going on. It's always a kind of a fun event to be part of.
Great. Keep us up to date. Let us know what's going on, and then we can find out how all this progresses. And it sounds like there's a lot happening, but there's also a lot in the planning as well. So it'll be great to see how that develops.
Great stuff.
Lovely. Great to chat to you, Ollie.
Nice one. Cheers, Mark.
Do you need help and support in creating and embedding music in your school? If so, we have created Primary Music on Fire to help you with just this, a music membership site that's taking the fear out of teaching music by giving you the step-by-step skills and ongoing support you need to produce lifelong musical memories for you, your school and your pupils. Go to educationonfire.com/primary-music. Thanks for listening to the Education on Fire podcast. For more information of each episode and to get in touch, go to educationonfire.com. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.